Hello, friends, to another episode of Talk Illini, brought to you by Orange and Blue News and the On3 Network. Today, we get to talk a little basketball, which we haven't really on this channel. By the way, brand new Illini channel. If you haven't already, make sure you subscribe. Make sure you hit the like on this particular video. We're going to have Illini content for you almost as often as we can every single week. So make sure you're subscribed and you won't miss a thing. Today, I have a special guest, the captain of the mothership here at Orange and Blue News, Doug Bucshon. Thanks for joining me today.
Glad to be on. And I just want to say, up front, you and JR have been doing a great job with this Talk Illini podcast. Definitely a plus for our subscribers. So thank you and JR for doing such a good job with it.
Well, I appreciate the opportunity that you afforded myself, and I feel like I'm speaking for JR on that front. So, Doug, let's take our minds off of football for a little bit. Obviously, with the bye week, I feel like everyone needs a little mental break when it comes to football. So let's focus on basketball. And before we talk about the big news with the AP ranking coming out on Monday, I just wanted to gather your thoughts on Big Ten Media Days that happened last week in Chicago. Anything interesting that Brad said, or maybe Kylan, or it was Ben Humrichous who represented the Illini that jumped out at you?
The funny thing about Big Ten Media Days every year is every team's going to win the Big Ten, right? I mean, it's all the typical preseason positive stuff. But yeah, there's a few nuggets that were interesting, I think. Of course, the Illinois fans are still waiting on Andrej Stojaković, maybe the best player on the team, certainly the best scorer or most versatile scorer anyway. Still waiting on him. He hurt his knee in the summer. Hasn't practiced yet, and it's going to take him a while to get up to speed before he's ready. I think Kylan really has embraced the leadership role. That's a big thing with him. I think the team last year with all the new players, 11 new players last year, talented team, 2 first-round draft picks, but with all those new players, it seems like they were a little bit rudderless at times. Maybe didn't have the on-the-court leadership that you were looking for. And that's understandable. It's not a knock on the kids, on the players. It's just the circumstances. And Coach Underwood probably had to take the lead a little bit more as far as that goes. And you really like to have a player or 2 or 3 players who take the lead as far as leadership on the court goes. And I think Kylan Boswell has really embraced that role. And since he's came here to Champaign, got out of Arizona, came back home, really matured. The kid's become a different guy. You can tell it when you talk to him. He's very confident. And I think the players, and especially the new players, have really accepted him as the leader of the team.
Yeah, I completely agree. That's been one of my biggest stories that I've talked about all summer long as well. Kylan, I think, truly understands and appreciates that this could be his last year playing college basketball. And you see it in all the offseason interviews. Anytime anybody asks him a question, like, he speaks as if he's the captain, right? He likes to hype up the freshmen on the basketball team and his other teammates. And really, as you said, he had some drama, I guess you can say, that he dealt with at Arizona. But now that he's come here, one of my favorite things at Big Ten Media Days was a writer asked him about the potential of coming back next year if the 5-for-5 passes. And Kylan simply said, "I'd like to be in the NBA." And again, to me, that just kind of more so focuses. I don't think he was, speaking ill of the university in any sort of way, but he's simply saying, I need to play my best game because he thinks that his best game can get him to the next level. And, that can really help this Illinois team eventually potentially reach its ceiling as well.
We'll see how that goes. I mean, everybody wants to play in the NBA. Of course, Kylan's positional size might be a little bit of an issue for him, but he has a lot of intangibles. I think it all depends. If you remember last year, he got off to a slow start shooting the basketball. And that's probably a huge key for him this year, is getting off to a fast start, knocking down shots. Because for some reason, I don't know why, but he's always been a pretty decent three-point shooter. Right. But there were some bricks last year to start the season, and but finished strong. Had a good NCAA tournament and was making shots and getting to the rim. And if he starts this year the way he finished last year, he's going to be an all Big Ten type of player. As we know, he's a great defender, one of the best on the ball defenders in the Big Ten Conference. So, the 5-for-5 is going to be interesting because in the day and age of NIL and revenue sharing, players have to weigh their options. Can I make more money in Europe, or can I make more money coming back to college basketball and playing another year, playing a 5th year? And Kylan's one of those guys that's going to have to weigh those options and see what the best fit is for him.
I'm curious, Doug, what are your thoughts on Ben Hummerhouse and what role you think he's going to have on next year's team? I know I had a lot of people in the Talk Illini Discord talk about Why is Brad sending out Ben? Why did he choose Ben as a representative? Do you think, I'll save my thoughts for afterwards, but do you think that he meant anything by sending Ben specifically?
Well, I think he sent him because he's a mature kid who's going to say all the right things and represent the university well, and not necessarily the best player on the team, but a very media savvy type of guy and a leader. And that's the reason that he sent him. With Ben, of course, he's known as a shooter, and then he didn't shoot the ball. He did at times, but when he wasn't making shots, he wasn't doing a whole lot else on the basketball court. And that's been an off-season focus for him, is becoming more of a complete player. I don't think he really honestly recognized the jump that he was making to the Big Ten Conference, to high major basketball. And that, I think it caught him by surprise a little bit. He didn't, and he wasn't able to put the ball on the floor and get to the rim. He wasn't able to get to be a really good rebounder at this level, because he couldn't change directions. It wasn't really strong around the basket. Those were focuses in the offseason. He got in better shape, added muscle, and lost some fat. Not that he was fat; he's a thin guy, but got in better physical condition. Focused a lot on putting the ball on the floor and scoring a variety of ways. Because a 6'9" guy who's just a spot-up shooter, and then his shot doesn't go down, that doesn't help your team a whole lot.
You're exactly right. And in a lot of ways, you took the words out of my mouth. For me, it was like last year, Ben came with such high expectations, not necessarily to his own fault. You had outside writers hyping him up as possibly, the next Dalton Connect. And you had Brad Underwood doing what Brad Underwood does every offseason. He finds a player and he just hypes them up to very high expectations, whether that player can meet it or not. And I think Ben was kind of a lightning rod when it comes to Illini fans about, one night you loved him, one night you didn't. For me, I think Brad picking Ben as a representative was kind of like a subtle nod to him saying, hey, I believe you. I trust you. You just play your game. That pressure that you had last year, forget about it. Now just go in the gym, shoot. You're one of the oldest players on this team. I trust you. I wanted you back. And I'm showing it by making you one of the faces of the basketball team this year at Media Days.
Yeah, you hear reports last year, this time of year, you hear all these reports from Ubben about Ben Humrichous, great shooter. Well, a lot of guys can make shots in practice. Right. Game speed is a completely different thing. And game speed, as I said before, game speed took him by surprise. I think he had a little bit of a shock there when we started playing against Big Ten teams. But he has a nice looking shot. He has good form on his shot, good rotation, and all that kind of stuff. But game speed's completely different. He wasn't up to that challenge sometimes last year. And hopefully the game has slowed down for him now this year. And he does seem like he's more confident going into the season. But you want to see him defend, and you want to see him get 5 or 6 rebounds. There were some games last year where I don't think he got any rebounds, or maybe one. If he's going to be playing that 4 spot, I know he's a stretch 4, and that's a position on the team, and they're positionless a lot of the time. But if you're going to be playing the 4 spot, you got to rebound, and he's going to have to get inside and mix it up a little bit and grab some boards.
So, Doug, I always look at Media Days as kind of the unofficial kickoff of the basketball season. And then things become a lot more real once the actual AP rankings come out, which is what happened on Monday. Illinois debuts at 17. And this was one of those questions I've been asking myself back and forth. So I'm very curious on your thoughts. Illinois, number 17. Too high, too low, just about right? What do you think?
It's a mama bear. It's just about right. I think it's just about right. I mean, as we saw in football, preseason rankings don't mean all that much, especially in the day and age of the transfer portal and, rosters flipping. It's a team never has the same team coming back. You have new starters. A lot of times you have almost a whole new roster. So it's guesswork. You're looking at the pieces, but you're not really looking at the whole of the team and how they mesh. And that's going to be the thing with Illinois. We want to see on Sunday against Illinois State. We won't see the whole team because a couple guys won't play, but we want to see how they mesh as a team. We want to see how the pieces fit, and that's the thing. But KenPom, they were number 6, so KenPom likes them a lot. And they do have good pieces. They put if Brad Underwood is going to be remembered for one thing, it's the ability to construct a roster. He sits down every spring after the season's over and says, okay, what do we need? And then they go out and get it. And they spend a little money to get Andrej Stojaković. They got, of course, famously all these kids from Europe who Brad Underwood likes a lot because the way they practice, fundamentally sound, complete game, that kind of thing. And on paper, I think they have a good team. In fact, he might have his deepest team that he's had here at Illinois. Yeah, I think it lacks the star power that we've seen with Kofi Coburn and Howard Asumu and Terrence Shannon Jr. Probably doesn't have that type of player who's going to compete for first team All-American, but they can go pretty deep into the bench and really good positional size, can defend the rim. And we'll talk about that a lot more coming up when we do a season preview. But I think it's going to be a pretty good team, and 17 to start the season seems about right to me.
Yeah, it's kind of funny. I pointed out this is kind of the reverse of the football team, because the football team started off at, I believe, 12, but all the analytics and the numbers rankings had them more lower, like in the 30s range. And with the basketball, it's kind of essentially reversed. The analytics love this roster, whereas the writers, I'm not saying they don't. 17 is still the highest, I think, since 21, I believe, that we've started in the preseason. So again, there is love, but you're also kind of, I think, it's tough. Like even me, when I ask myself this question, because we don't know what this roster is going to look like. And that's not even taking into account, the injuries and the NCAA issues that we're dealing with the guy like Petrovic. It doesn't look like he's going to play Sunday against Illinois State, but is he going to be cleared before, the first game of the season? These are questions that none of us really know. Obviously it'd be nice to have Ty Rodgers here, but looks like, Brad's purposely being very vague about, how long that injury is going to be. So it's hard, even if the team was fully healthy, to know what this team would look like, because we've got 6 returning players, but that still means half the team, including guys that you're absolutely going to count on to play big roles. Well, they haven't played together yet. And even during this offseason, while Stojaković was practicing with the team, Petrovic was still overseas. And then finally, when Petrovic came here and started practicing with the team, well, then Stojaković hurt his knee. And so all the guys haven't really had a time to mesh yet. And, they're quite honestly going to have to mesh pretty quick, because that non-conference schedule is not something to sneeze at.
No, it's not. They play four teams in the top 20, and they play UConn, the number 4 team in the country, in the preseason. Get the United Center game against Alabama. You go to Madison Square Garden again. Really tough, really difficult preseason schedule, and then the Big Ten slate. So it's going to get started fast. I think they open with Jackson State and some games like that at home, but a really tough schedule. Mihailo Petrovic, I think they're pretty confident the NCAA is going to clear him to play. It's just, at this point, it's probably just a matter of what class they're going to stick him in. And we've heard rumblings that he's probably going to be a junior because of his experience, playing pro ball. The kid's 22 years old, but I can say that I think they're a completely different team without him or with him. Depends on how you look at it. But when you just plug in a point guard like that, who really defenders can't stay in front of, and Kylan Boswell told me during media day here on campus that he can't guard him, can't stay in front of him. So if you got a guy like that, and we've seen that at Purdue, right, with their point guard, who put the ball on the floor and get wherever he wants on the floor, creating, getting in the lane, that frees up a lot of guys. And when you have guys rolling to the bucket and you can't guard the point guard, that's a weapon. I think he does want to work on his 3-point shooting a little bit. He's a little bit erratic with the shot, but if he can knock down some shots, that kind of weapon, it's going to be a completely different team with that type of player running the point.
Yeah, I think you nailed it. And that's also one of my causes of concern. It's just like the fact that these guys aren't able to all practice together. The team with and without Petrovic on the court is going to look a lot different. And so with Petrovic not being able to practice with the full Stojaković and, all the players until the season starts, I feel like there's going to be a lot of learning on the fly, getting the chemistry together while they're on the basketball court, hopefully playing one of the weaker teams on the schedule. But, we talked a little bit about Kylan and now Mihailo. Let me just ask you your thoughts. Obviously, over this offseason, one of the names that seems to be mentioned almost every single time is freshman Keaton Wagler. And, apparently the staff really feels confident that they got a huge hit with this one. What have you heard?
Same thing. A lot of preseason hype about the kid. He's better than they thought he was. I think the big thing with him is versatility as far as scoring. Versatile scorer. He can score anywhere on the court. He's mature for a freshman. He can put the ball on the floor. He's a good passer. I don't think he's the type of offensive weapon that Will Riley was last year, that type of shooter. but he's similar to Will Riley in his maturity for his age, feel for the game. And that's what they're really impressed with. I think he's going to play a lot, and heard this, we've heard the same thing. And we talked to him last week, and really impressive kid for a freshman. Says all the right things, really confident kid. So yeah, I think he's going to play a lot. He's Sunday against ISU. He's probably going to start at the 3 with Stojaković out. So he's probably the player that I'm most looking forward to seeing play on Sunday. I've seen all the other guys play pretty much, so we know what we're getting. But I want to see what we're getting in Keaton Wagler, and the coaching staff's really high on him.
And that's a perfect transition. Obviously, the season doesn't officially start, but an exhibition game against Illinois State. Illinois State's a very good mid-major program, a team that's going to contend for their conference. What do you want to see in that game? I remember last year in the exhibition match, we got our doors blown out. Couldn't guard a wind in that game, and there was a lot of panic fires being set out. But what do you want to see this particular Sunday against Illinois State? Does a win matter, or are you just more focused on seeing maybe the style of play, maybe the new defensive schemes that we're going to be throwing out there, or do you just not want to see anyone get hurt?
Well, I think a win matters to Brad Underwood and Ryan Peaton. I think coaches always want to win. They're going to want to go into that winning the game. But what I want to see is some cohesion and a clean game. That's what you want to see, and just how far along they are practice-wise. That trip, down to Mississippi last year, the results were not at all surprising. You had a veteran team that they were going up against, and Illinois was a completely new basketball team. So the results of that were not surprising in the least. But ISU is really good. They got the kid Chase Walker. I think that's his name. Yeah, Chase Walker, first team all-conference player probably this year. He's going to contend for the Valley Player of the Year. Good team, deep team. They've recruited well there, for a mid-major program. So it's going to be a good barometer, I think, for Illinois to play a team like ISU. And as a person that went to ISU, it's going to be a fun game for me too. So I like to see the two teams meet. You don't see that very often, those two teams meeting from just down the road from each other. But yeah, but as far as what I want to see, I want to see a clean game. Mm-hmm. Don't come out and be sloppy. Know what you're doing on the court, execute, and defend a little bit. You don't want to see a ragged basketball game.
Yeah, I'm with you. I just kind of want to see, the practice translate to on the court. I want to see these guys play against opponents and really start developing that chemistry. Kylan Boswell, I hope, I think in the last 8 games of the season last year, he averaged 17, 5, and 5 or something along lines that. I want to see him, what kind of, does he accept the point guard roles while Mihailo's gone? And if he does, is he playing more distributor, or does he kind of take the ball a little, like in charge of the ball a little bit more? Tommy Avicic, Zavonimir, like how does that work? What's that setup? Are they going to play both Avicic shy? Is that the plural word for it together in the front court, or are they going to, split those minutes and possibly play 40 minutes of Avicic? One guy who I've been hyping up on Lockdown Illini, I can't wait to see David Mirković. Everything I've seen and heard of David, suggests to me that he's one of the most overlooked guys on this roster. So what's he going to look like against Illinois State? Illinois State's going to be a very good team, but there's not a lot of 6'9", 260-pound power forwards that they're going to have to deal with. So can David, kind of have his way against their front courts? These are the sort of storylines I want to see to get me excited about this season.
The Redbirds have Brandon Lieb. So
you're right.
That 7'1".
Yeah.
You mentioned Mirković. Skill-wise, I think he's a very talented kid. It's surprising. He came over here for the event here in the U.S., right, and looked quicker than expected. You were expecting a kid was kind of plodding up and down the court, but he can move laterally. He defended pretty well. He can shoot the ball, put it on the floor. And when you meet him in person, he's a pretty impressive guy. He's huge dude. Just physically a well-built kid. Skill-wise, I think he would be a starter if it was all about just the skill. Mm-hmm. But Hummerhouse has been in the system, is comfortable with the system, is a plug-and-play guy right now. So he'll probably be the starter at the 4. But who knows, by Big Ten season or January, you might see David Mirković in the starting lineup.
And we'll have a full season preview at a later date. But Doug, before I let you go, let's talk just to football just for a minute or two. Illinois goes into their first bye week at 5-2. What's your impressions, feelings of the season so far, and maybe looking forward?
They're a good team. They're 5-2, which is exactly where you expected them to be. I think in my preseason game-by-game predictions, I predicted them to beat Indiana and lose to USC. And you flip-flop that, and it's the same record, and they got an opportunity because their schedule now is somewhere, some strength of schedule is somewhere in the 60s now, where it was top 5 type of schedule the first part of the season. And you can't say the first half because there's 7 games in, but it's kind of like the All-Star break in baseball. But that first half of the season was tough schedule. Indiana was an implosion. I don't know what to make of that. Total disaster, and hopefully it's an anomaly. But they have an opportunity to sweep the rest of the schedule. Will they? You don't know. But Washington's a tough out at home. If you were playing Washington in Champaign, I would feel really good about that game. You're going into Seattle and playing them, totally different team. But they're a beatable team, and the rest of the schedule plays out, I think, pretty well for Illinois. A chance to finish 10-2 and go to a really good bowl game.
Yeah, I agree. And we'll have a lot more basketball and football content for you right here on Talk Illini. Doug, can you let the audience know real quick where they can find all your work?
Yeah, at IllinoisOn3.com. You can follow me on Twitter, the site previously known as Twitter, on X, at Illinois Rivals. You can go anywhere on the On3 network, to any place on the On3 network, and sign up and pick Illinois as the team that you want, as your primary team, and sign up for Orange and Blue News. So really good deal. July 1st, we flipped over from the Rivals Network to On3, and it's been great. The national content on the On3 and all of the perks they provide for subscribers is totally different story now than it was before we flipped over to On3. And we still have Rivals covering the recruiting piece. So you get all the Rivals, you get Field of 68 basketball. So a really good deal. Sign up for Orange and Blue News on On3, and I think you'll like it.
Yeah, you can go to Orange and Blue News for all the writing content. Doug does a great job over there. And make sure you're subscribed to this channel where myself, JR, and Carson, we're going to continue to produce as much video content for you as you guys like to. Again, on your way out, make sure you hit the like button. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel. Until next time, ILL.